So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to change the slide. And then you're going to go, or you're going to go, yay. We'll see. And then I'm going to walk you through exactly how I got my answers, because I'm pretty confident that mine are correct. I'm pretty sure they are. But we can fight about that if you want to. But here's my answers. Let's see if yours match up with mine. I'm going to walk you through how I got my answers so you can kind of understand. Yes, I understand that Saturday and Sunday are on this end. It doesn't matter. It's okay. All right, so follow me. Follow me. Did everybody get the 4th as the execution date? Yes. Because if you missed that, I don't know. I can't help you. Now I'm going to start with our earnest money, right? Our earnest money, how many days does the contract by default tell us that we have to deposit earnest money?
3 days.
3 days after what? The execution date. Now when we're counting days, we always start the first day is day 0, because there's this concept where when you have a particular number of days prescribed for something, then the first day that you count is the first full day. This is considered a partial day. So the 4th was our execution day. So that's 0, 1, 2, 3, which puts us on the 7th for our earnest money. Now our time reference date, and actually I want to back up on this, because this is calendar days, right? The earnest money is not business days. It says you count 3 days unless the last day falls on a holiday or a weekend, then you go to the next non-holiday or weekend. So if you counted business days, you would say 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. You would be a day late, right? But we're counting calendar days, not business days. Now our time reference date is by default on what? Day 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. So our time reference date also falls on the 7th. Very convenient, right? I'm going to skip the loan and come back to that, but let's do inspections first. How many days by default do we have to do inspections? 10 days. 10 days after time reference date. And again, we start with 0, and time reference date paragraph actually specifically says the time reference date shall be counted as day 0. So the contract even addresses that here. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we end up on the 17th. Now, once we've got to the end of our inspection period, assume that we're not going to terminate the contract. We're going to submit a TRR. Even if you are going to terminate, when do we have to make that decision to terminate or submit a TRR?
24 hours.
Within 24 hours after the end of the inspection period, so that's going to be the 18th. Now, I put in there that that's our date to make that decision to submit a TRR or terminate the contract, but also to submit a copy of all written inspection reports to the seller, because that has to be done regardless of whether you're going to terminate or request repairs. We have to do that by this date. And then how many days do we have to negotiate our TRR? 7 by default. And again, we start with day 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That puts us on the 25th to negotiate our TRR. Now, of course, you could do it early. If I submit my TRR on the 15th, then we would have 7 days from when it's submitted. This is one from when it's submitted, so then our negotiation would have to end by the 22nd, right? Now I want to back up and do the loan. We've got 3 different issues with the loan. One is I don't like the loan terms. I find that they are unacceptable. The second one is that we got to make sure we know when our conditional loan approval letter is due. And the third one is when can we terminate because I don't qualify. Now, that first one, do you understand where this concept of I can terminate if the loan terms are unacceptable, where that comes from? Do you follow that? Because this can be a little bit confusing when we actually look at our conventional loan addendum, because that loan addendum is formatted a little weird. But it's important to understand how this works, right? Because in paragraph 1, we've got this language that talks about we're going to get a loan, and there's this bold line that says, within 5 days following the time reference date, the buyer shall either 1 or 2, actually A or B. And A says, I'm going to make application for the loan, right? I'm going to go ahead and try to get my loan. B says, give notice to the seller that the loan terms are unacceptable and terminate the contract. So the buyer's got 5 days from the time reference date, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to under 1B, give notice to the seller that the loan terms are unacceptable, cancel the contract. Kind of forget about that that's even a thing, that you've actually got like a week after we enter into the contract to just come back and say, I don't like the loan terms. But a buyer could do that. But let's assume we are going to go ahead and pursue our loan. So we're going to operate under paragraph 1A. And the first thing that says is, look, we've got 10 days to provide a conditional loan approval letter. Do you see where that comes from? See, the timelines are a little bit weird. That big bold line up above A says within 5 days following the time reference date, either make application or tell us you're going to terminate it because you don't like it. And if you're going to make application, then it says, well, now you've got to give us a conditional loan approval letter within 10 days from the time reference date. It's weird the way this is done, but 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, ends on our inspection period right here, right? So our conditional loan approval letter would be 10 days after the time reference date as well. And our last ones are, if I don't qualify for financing, as we talked about in an earlier scenario, I can do that when? Anytime before closing, right? So I put it down here on closing date because sometime before closing is when that qualification might come in where I don't qualify for financing. Not that I don't like the loan terms, I can't get the money. They won't give it to me. Not that it's too expensive, I can't get the money. Now what about your final walkthrough? When is that? Whenever you want to, right? It's not in the contract. That's a little bit of a red herring. There's no specific date for that, but probably sometime here and not like here. That'd be weird. So sometime around here on that end of the period right before closing, right? Any questions about calculating the dates here? No? Great. Well, then here's what we're going to do. Let's take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back, and I'm going to make you do it again. It's confusing. Well, that's why you got to... Listen, it's confusing. This is why you got to have a license to... Yes, because the real world is chaotic. It's confusing. That's why you got to have a license to do it. Not just anybody can do it. All right, so let me tell you how I got my answers one more time. We've got our execution date, which is the 1st. I gave you that one. I hope you got that one right. Now our earnest money, we got 3 days to deposit it, right? 0, 1, 2, 3. Uh-oh, it's the 4th of July. Now again, we don't calculate business days. If you calculated business days, you would say 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. You would be 2 days late. Instead, the earnest money paragraph says we have to deposit it by day 3. And then it goes on to say if the last day to deposit earnest money falls on a holiday or weekend, then the deadline is extended to the next non-holiday, non-weekend, which is the next day. Now our time reference date is 3 days as well. 0, 1, 2, 3. Does the time reference date care about holidays? No. Doesn't care about holidays and weekends. So our time reference date can be on the 4th. All that is just a date we start calculating things, right? So we got our inspection period, which is 10, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we got 24 hours to submit our TRR, decide we're going to terminate, and also to provide the seller with a copy of all written inspection reports. And then we got 7 days to negotiate our TRR, so we drop down 1 more week. Then we look back at our loan. Again, we got 0 here, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to determine that the loan terms are unacceptable where the buyer can terminate because they don't like the loan terms. And 10 days happens to match up on our inspection period in this case. Wouldn't always. If you put 15 days for your inspection period, then these wouldn't match up. So it's not by default. It just happens to be because they're both 10 days after your time reference date. That's what our conditional loan approval letters do. And if we don't qualify, we've got all the way up till closing, and perhaps we do our final walkthrough somewhere in these last couple of days. Now I want to make a couple of points. First of all, we always calculate calendar days unless it says otherwise. This is the only one in the base contract that says otherwise. It's your earnest money. Now there's a couple other things where if we're looking at contingency contracts, for example, they've just changed the contingency contract where if the buyer is not under contract, they've got that kick-out clause, right? Where the seller, if they get a new offer in, they can give notice to the buyer of remove your contingency or I'm terminating the contract. They just added in a provision there where it says, it used to say you got to give them at least 24 hours. Now it says if that 24-hour period, if it ends on a holiday or weekend, you got to give them to the next non-holiday or non-weekend. So if you give them notice on Friday that says, hey, I got another offer, I got that backup offer, you need to remove your contingency, it's not Saturday, it's got to go all the way to Monday at the least. So understand that our new contingency addenda are like that. Now there's one other complicating factor, and that's if I've got a deadline that falls on a weekend or a holiday that's not addressed like the earnest money, we still have a potential problem. The reason why is there's this statute out there, and it's in the definition statutes of all of our Oklahoma State statutes, and that's a definition of holidays in the state of Oklahoma. It says all these different things like Christmas Eve and Christmas, and the day before Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving, and the 4th of July are holidays. And it also says Saturday and Sunday are holidays. And then there's a provision in that statute. It's got nothing to do with real estate, but it says something to the effect of if you've got an obligation, a contractual or another obligation to do something on a holiday, you cannot be prejudiced by doing it on the next non-holiday. Something general like that. I don't remember exactly what it says. You never would think in a million years this has anything to do with real estate, except there was some case law that went up to the Oklahoma Supreme Court in 1979, where some idiot scheduled closing on a Sunday. And the buyer shows up on Monday and they say, hey, I get to close on Monday. I know that it says time is of the essence. I know that it says close on or before Sunday, but because that falls on a Sunday, that's a holiday, I get to go to the next non-holiday to close. And here's this statute in Title 25 that says what a holiday is and says I can't be prejudiced by performing on this day what I had a deadline to do here. And the Oklahoma Supreme Court said, you are correct. So you had until Monday to do that. Now that's complicating because I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means that since this falls on Saturday, does that mean they actually have until Monday to tell you the loan terms are unacceptable? I don't know the answer to that. Here's how I handle it. If my client has a deadline on a weekend or a holiday, we're going to meet that deadline. If the other party has a deadline on a holiday or a weekend and they roll over to the next business day, then I'm probably going to go to my client and say, it's probably not worth fighting over. Let's just let it go and move on, right? It's just not worth fighting over because they might have an out because of this weird statute that's out there that exists. But for our purposes, the way I look at it is I'm going to treat that holiday or weekend deadline as a deadline, and that's what we're going to do. And we're going to just make sure we meet that no matter what. That's my recommendation for how to handle it. That way you don't have any issues. And if the other party does it, then okay, we'll show them grace till Monday and not fight about it because it's probably not worth it, right? At the end of the day, most of us want to keep the deal together anyway, so let's just keep the deal together anyway, right? So something to kind of think about there on those, a couple of side issues.